And so here's another major factor that will help you in your personal injury work if, and this is to already be able to access personal injury attorneys without any sales. What is it that is important to them that you can say or do that will increase your relevance? That's what we're talking about here. So the second topic is locations. Remember, the number one most important factor after there's a perceived need is location. Where are you at relative to that particular client that he has? Because that will be the number one reason that destroys the case. I remember talking to a new client about this, and I told him, explained it, and the very next week he said, "Oh, by the way, what we just talked about last week just happened." He had a personal injury attorney try to refer him a patient that was not only a little too far, and actually it was way too far, considered the density of the area. It's a very, very metro dense area, and he had to go through a large geographic area as well as multiple psychographic barriers. And that client just said, "No, I'm not going over there. That's too much." It was trying to ask him to do too much. So what can we do with locations? If you can represent yourself in multiple locations, and bear with me on this, there's three main ways to represent yourself with locations, and I'm going to go how you can do this very easily, and that doesn't cost you anything, but it creates a lot of influence. Okay, so it would be good if you owned more particular location in the mind of the attorney. The more locations that you own, the better it is. It creates a sense of influence. Let's face it, if you had 5 or 10 offices in a metro area versus one, you're going to have way more influence with that personal injury attorney. Now, there's 3 different ways of creating that perception, so bear with me here. And there's one way I do not recommend, and there's one way that's just doesn't cost any money, and it's absolutely very easy to do. So why would you want locations? Well, the influence and the power, number one. Number two is there's a perceived one decision maker. In other words, there's a perception from the personal injury standpoint that if one person had 2, 3, or 4 multiple offices and they deal with that person, that it's much easier to deal with one person relative to any issues than multiple people. One of the reasons franchises do so well from a branding standpoint is trust. People have a sense that they know what they're going to get. If I go to a McDonald's in any state, I know what I'm going to get when I walk into that McDonald's. And so it increases the perception of trust also. So there's one decision maker. Also, there's the perception. Now, I'm not saying this is necessarily true, but there's the perception that the notes will be the same. And that doesn't mean everybody's notes got to be the same, but I'm just suggesting the power of how this can positively impact your marketing. Your notes, reports, are your knowledge. Now, I would try to get uniform in the notes, reports, and knowledge. I certainly wouldn't want to have affiliate relationships and there be contradictory notes and reports and knowledge between everybody. And the other reason is when you say you have all these locations, it creates the sense that now you are going to be able to give them a lot of business. Okay? So that's the reason that you would want to consider the multiple locations. Now, let me give you my example. Now, when I started, I just marketed my office, and I didn't do all of these things, but I was very strong in sales. But the more of these things you do, the easier it gets. And so when I started my marketing in the early 90s for personal injury attorneys, I only had one office, and that was it. So I only marketed one office. That was it. Okay, and I did fine. And if that's all you want to do, you can do fine, and you're going to want to own that geographic area. How can you create a greater influence? Well, eventually I took that to 9 offices. I eventually, over the next 7 years, built out 9 offices, and I do not suggest that. That's the last thing that I suggest anybody do. So let me just say that up front. But my point is I established my personal injury marketing with one office, one location, and I didn't even change the name. I was a chiropractor. So that was the bare bones, but I knew how to establish need. That's what I did know how to do. And then ultimately, it was 9 offices. Well, when we marketed in those 9 offices and we made a phone call to whether it was a medical doctor to establish networking relationships or personal injury attorney, we got in. They didn't turn us away. And I could tell you some stories of how well we were received. So it creates a tremendous amount of influence. Now, there's 3 ways to increase your perceived locations. There's 3 general ways to increase influence. Number 1 is the easiest, costs no money, affiliate marketing. It's more of a psychological inhibition for a chiropractor. They're afraid of having a relationship with anybody else, almost within the United States. I mean, it's ungodly how large of an area chiropractors don't want anybody else to deal with. So, but what I'm saying is you have to remember patients won't come based on your geographic mental boundaries. They're way, way smaller than yours. So the first way is an affiliate marketing relationship. Let's give a simple example. You're in a county and say there's 3 small, let's say you're in more of a rural type county and there's 3 small cities, the county hub, and then say 2 other cities. So we'll simplify this of, maybe 5 to 10,000 population, 20, whatever. Well, it'd be very easy to go to each of those other cities, those 2 other cities, and form a relationship with one of those chiropractors in each of those cities for combined affiliate marketing to your target audience. And now you have the county. You now own the county from a marketing perspective. You know how powerful that's going to be when you own the locations in your target market's mind, as opposed to an individual person coming in from here or there. It carries a lot of weight. So the first way is affiliate marketing. Affiliate, and all you're doing is you're just is making a relationship, saying, hey, we'll just go find your geographic areas and find hopefully another like-minded person who is willing to market their particular areas. Now, it'd be nice if you could move it along and have the same name. Even if you don't have the same name, it's still better to market uniformly than not. But if you could put a common name, that definitely is way better than having 3 separate names. Way better. So the other reason with affiliate marketing is you meet his connections, his personal injury attorneys, and they meet yours. And that seems to be a foreign concept with chiropractors. And the first thing that I always hear is, and it's always fear-based. I don't want to give up my referrals, and it's always fear of loss of why the chiropractor says that he's not wanting to do that. It doesn't matter what you think. Remember, it matters what the patient thinks. And if the patient is not going to drive to your location, they're not going to drive to your location. So if you need to go a little further away for you to feel comfortable, maybe on the other side of the town or whatever, then do that. But remember, you are not going to get clients left and right from a huge, widespread geographic area. It is not going to happen. I opened an office literally 2 miles up the street from my office. And the reason I did that wasn't to hurt my business. That's not why I did it. I did it because I wasn't drawing patients from that office right there because of psychographic barriers. I had an interstate. It was driving out. It was a county line. I had 3 psychographic barriers. So I couldn't get business. So I knew immediately, and that was a very high demographic profile area. I knew immediately I could put an office up there. It wouldn't affect me one bit. And even though it was only 2 miles away. So just kind of keep inside them. Almost every time I talk about this with chiropractors, it's the fear of the other person's going to get your business. And all I'm trying to say is the other person's already getting that business because they're in the proper location. So when the personal injury attorney has a client that's in the other person's area, that's where they go. And when they go in your area, they're going to refer them to somebody in your area. So, just find your spread out a little further geographically for your affiliate relationships. But that is the easiest way, and I strongly recommend it. And if you have any further questions about that, let me know. But it's affiliate marketing. That's it. You're not creating any other type of relationship. You're not creating an LLC. There's nothing. You're just saying, hey, we're going to call this a certain name. We're going to have stationery for it, and we'll just do a few things in unison. So now you have it. You have the locations covered, and hopefully by now you know the importance of locations relative to personal injury attorney and their clients. The second category is subcontract. So you can subcontract services, and there's a couple ways to do this. The subcontracting is let's say, and I have a client does this very well, is that he goes to these other geographic pockets where he's not going to pull business from, and he knows that. And then he just subcontracts with other providers in that area. They all the phones come through him, so he controls the phone lines and all that. But he markets all those locations, and he just subcontracts. So he will even go there sometimes, but also he'll have them do the business or do the services as a subcontractor, almost like if you had a subcontractor in your office, except instead of him being in your office, it's another office on the other side of town in a different location. And there's different ways of doing that, whether you just need to, when money starts crossing hands is when you have to start being careful about crossing your T's and dotting your I's. When you start getting money, but you're not referring to get money and he's not referring to get business, that's what's illegal. So the actual work is being done. So you're not referring him business and then him doing it and giving you money. So there's legally totally ways of setting it up where you could subcontract. So you have your other locations, and then you just have subcontracting agreements with those people. So you can still market those locations. You will still own those locations in your marketing. And then if that client is closer to this area than your area, the attorney sends them over there, and then you have a subcontracting agreement with that particular facility to take care of that patient, XYZ, and of course you would be the manager. You'd manage the patient. And again, if you have more questions about that, let me know. But that's a very good way of also expanding. Now remember, I'm not talking about you going to these different locations. That's not what I'm talking about. And I don't recommend that at all. I'm talking about subcontracting. If that particular person is in a geographic location that would not geographically come to you anyway, why not own that location in your marketing and get revenue from it by subcontracting without spending any money? It's a very effective way, but you have to think differently. You have to be a little more open-minded. You can't be as limited in your thinking. Now, the last way is a brick and mortar, where actually you open a facility in these other locations. Now, obviously, you have total control. You have total revenue. So those are the positives. The negatives are, and I do not recommend this, because you better have very good systems. If you don't know how to maximize the time for money in your office to where you have more business than what you can handle, and if you don't know how to do that, in other words, you don't know advertising real well, you don't know sales real well, and you don't know management principles very well, I strongly recommend you do not do that. Because if you don't know advertising, especially if you don't know sales and you don't know much about management, you're going to be headed into a big financial problem. And I see that over and over. Doctors routinely never maximize their time for money in their office. They don't know advertising real well. They don't know sales real well. They don't know management real well. And so instead of learning them to increase their business, it's always greener on the other side. And so they think it's better over there. And so next thing you know, they've got another location over here, and now they're going back and forth, back and forth. Overhead's doubled, same. They're just getting market share because they don't know how to influence advertising or sales. And now you got a big mess on your hands. So I do not recommend the third category unless you definitely know advertising and sales and some management. So those are 3 ways to easily increase influence with. Remember, how important is location relative to a personal injury attorney? It's number 1. After they have the perceived need and they want the medical care, it's number 1, okay? Now, I tell you what, if you did that, I wouldn't keep chiropractic in the other names. I would definitely have the auto injury name for that. I mean, You wouldn't want to have the locations covered, and then you have the chiropractic, the low utilization number of the chiropractic name. So let me give you 3 examples here of clients. One good example is a client in San Diego, and they have a group out there, and it's an affiliate relation. It's an affiliate alliance. That's all it is. There's no exchange of money. There's no, and actually they don't even have, they do have an individual name as a group, and they did put up a website just for their individual name. And what they did is they just they only allowed people in certain geographic pockets to have them covered. And this was very smart for the person who started this many years ago. And so they got the county covered. And so they literally went out to these geographic pockets to bring in the providers. And each provider has to pay a fee. And I think that fee is like $400 a month, $500 a month, something like that. And they hire a PR person, essentially. And essentially all that person does is every week lines up a meeting with a different attorney. Now, there's definitely pros and cons relative to that situation. I could tell you some negative things about it, but that's not the point. The point is that was very smart that somebody created an alliance and connected the dots of these geographic locations and used synergy. They used masses. And they generally don't have trouble getting attorneys to their luncheons. They'll do lunches every Thursday. And that PR person is the person who kind of just drives it all together. But they do a tremendous amount of business. They do a tremendous amount of business and have a tremendous amount of state of awareness and influence and power. So that is a very good suggested model relative to where you're at. And if you have any questions on how to put that together, certainly call me or email me. The second one is the client that I told you that has, he's in New Orleans and he does the subcontracting. So he has multiple offices, but he just subcontracts. So he markets the whole New Orleans, so you wouldn't know any better, but he pretty much owns New Orleans from all these locations from the attorney perspective, but he doesn't. They're not his bricks and mortar. They're not his employees. He just subcontracts, and he controls the patient where they go over there, you know, and how much control you do is relative, but again, we can discuss that. But it's a great marketing model because of the influence. He's creating influence. And remember, the personal injury attorneys would rather deal with one decision maker in multiple locations than 10 different decision makers with 10 different issues and problems and notes and reports and etc. So that was a very good model. The next one is the example that I gave in Louisville when I eventually kept building offices. Well, those offices were owner operated. So they knew me well, and they essentially they were using my system, but they weren't my offices. They were bought from me, okay? But they were training me, so there was a tremendous amount of awareness and knowledge and systems and all that. I will give you that within each other. But we had 9 offices in the geographic location of Louisville, and we created a separate name. We hired a separate person as our public relations marketing person and trained her to promote the individual offices to the medical doctors and the attorneys. And I can go into that in further detail. But that also, and let me tell you, when we made a phone call and we said how many offices we had and how many patient visits and new patients we saw, I can't remember anybody who turned us down. We were influential. We were influential. And so you can totally remain your own individual office, not spend time or money at employees, and create these affiliate relationships and create a tremendous amount of influence and increase your market share. And these are some things you can do really easy, but they're mental. There just seems to be real mental blocks, emotional blocks with a lot of the chiropractors that I talk to. And that's all it is. It's just emotional blocks. So what geographic pockets? Again, every time I talk to a chiropractor, he's afraid to have anybody in his 50-mile radius affiliated with him. So if you have those kinds of fears, you won't be able to do this. You're going to have to overcome some of your fears and come to a sense of reality. That patients are going to travel all these distances, and they're not right now. They're presently being sent to all these other offices that you haven't harbored to help you and your benefits. So your fear is certainly inhibiting you because those patients are already going 50 miles away anyway, and you have no influence in there anyway. So how can you find your geographic pockets? You can just go to Google's map, put in your particular city. Couple considerations is the county hub. Remember, attorneys generally will stay within a county hub. So if I'm going to pick people to work with, I want to stay within that county hub because of the psychographic barriers of dealing with attorneys that are outside of that. So now I'm getting some mixed messages. So I prefer to have my affiliate relationships with marketing within the county hub. I want to own those locations, the top of the locations in that county. So just go to Google Maps and put in that, the city, and then look for the major areas that Google Maps, the names Google Maps gives out. Beware of the county barriers, and we talked about that, the county barriers, crossing county barriers. Generally, the county seat where the courthouse is per county generally, and that's where the attorneys are. They can do business elsewhere, but let me tell you, they'd much rather just walk across to the courthouse like they do every day and they know everybody than go 40 minutes or an hour away. So staying within the psychographic boundary of a county seat is pretty important. Just be aware of that. And here's some of the basics of how to put it together. Number one is agree on the basics. Now, what does basics mean? Well, they can mean a lot of things. But you would just want a short list of whoever you're doing these affiliate marketing relationships with, just agreeing on the basics. That's it. And usually basics deal with time and money because that's where the problems will come in, especially money. So there doesn't even have to be any exchange of money. It's just what will happen. What will happen. That's all. So you just agree on the basics with any of these affiliate relationships that you have. It's nice if you could use one separate name, not your name, not his name, but a total name that is totally a name that is totally relevant to the target market, the personal injury attorney. So now imagine you have multiple locations, influence that is needed for the personal injury attorneys for that county hub, and you have the right naming. Look how quickly you've moved out of chiropractic and 32% utilization into what they're already using. They're doing this right now. They're just doing it without you. This is what is happening. And some chiropractors are bright enough to and open-minded enough to create this because it already exists. This market already exists. Now, whether you tap into it or not, based on your inhibitions, fears, and your paradigm, that's just issues you're going to have to deal with. Now, if you have any questions relative to that or how to set it up or your particulars geographically, give me a call. Let me know. So you definitely want one name. The other advantage to this is you would be introducing your, and this really freaks the chiropractors out when I say this, you would be introducing your networking attorneys with him, and he would be introducing his circle of influence with you. Now, there's a tremendous amount of fear associated with that because the chiropractor is afraid, well, I don't want my attorney now sending him business. Well, remember, if you picked your geographic pockets accordingly, you're not going to get this business from this location coming here. You're already not getting the business, and that's what you need to understand. So you can magnify and leverage your time and energy and go into the market greater by doing these very simple things. And this is without any sales at all. This is just going, in other words, doing what they're already buying, doing what the personal injury attorney is already buying, and get out of the 32%. Go into the masses. So the good news is you could exchange each other's network. So your number of personal injury attorneys would double. So when that personal injury attorney that you didn't know, that you now were introduced to and now know is in your network marketing, when he now has a client in your area that won't go to your buddy who you had the relationship. You now get that business. You got to remember, the clients aren't going to go everywhere. They're not going to go everywhere just because the attorney says that. There are geographic limits, and they're much smaller than what you think they are. So being highly aware of your geographic boundaries will certainly help you tremendously, and then create affiliate relationships elsewhere outside of those boundaries. So in that particular case, if you met, watch this, if it was you, and let's say you knew 3 other people, and each of you had, say, 2 attorneys that you did business with. So immediately, if you had this one, you had 2, 4, 6. So now you have 8 attorneys instead of 2. And you're not getting the business from those other 6 attorneys anyway, from those other locations, because they're not going to come to you, because that's a geographic limitation. It's a barrier. You're not going to get that business. But when any of those 6 attorneys have a client in your area, that's the business you will now get that you're presently not getting because you don't know those attorneys. That's the difference it makes, okay? And once again, we're dealing with a tremendous amount of fears and inhibitions within the practitioner, as opposed to really understanding the demographics and the geographics of the target market and the perceived needs. So this is how you can easily, without spending any time or money, increase your market share in these particular categories. Okay? Now, that's the 2 topics we're going to cover today. If you have any questions on how to do this and your particulars, and there always is, and that's no problem, with a name, how you'd set it up, clear it up, with locations, which locations would you go? I'll be glad to pull up a map with you and go, these are the pockets I'd go after, and this is why. And so these are some really simple ways you can help yourself.